What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Rising Sun podcast with Dean Howell. As usual, this episode is brought to you by Prize Crew Coffee, the richest blends available out there on the market. My favorite is Molly's Dark and Stormy. Listen, it's veteran owned and operated. They use an air roaster, which is a fantastic way of roasting their beans. Personalized service with every shipment. And you can also link up with them to get emblematics, hats, t-shirts, coins done. Check out Prize Crew Coffee at prizecrewcoffee.com and use code SAIL, that's SAIL, for 10% at checkout. Hey, check it out, man. You're going to love this coffee, and I hope you go check it out. And with that, on to the show. Hey, listen, guys, I have an old shipmate on today. Super excited that she agreed to join me, Sarah Cruz. And Sarah Cruz just happens to be a lieutenant on active duty in the United States Navy. And just we served on McCampbell together when I was a command master chief there, and she was a young ensign. And I've been able to see her growth over these last several years. And when I'm looking for guests, if you follow the podcast, you know that I always want to have people on that have just good stories, man, that have been successful. And inevitably, everybody has challenges. And, that's the kind of things that we want to talk about on the Rising Sun podcast, because that's what I'm interested in at the end of the day. And it's my podcast. So I get to talk to whoever the fuck I want to, right? So I hope you also find it interesting. But you'll read her bio in the episode description for all the gory details and whatnot. But just super excited to have you on the show today. Sarah, how you doing?
I'm great. Sorry, I can't not call you CMC. It's just permanently ingrained in me. But I'm honored to be here, and thanks so much for reaching out. This is really fun, a new experience for me.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. So this is your first time doing a podcast?
This is my first time doing a podcast. Normally when I do any kind of like social outreach or anything, it's typically one of those formal Navy conferences. I had the opportunity to speak at the Women in Naval Service Symposium put on by University of Michigan this past March, I want to say. So that was really cool, but that's really what I've been doing most recently.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, same thing, right? Like, and so anything that's coordinated by Navy PAO, it is very structured, and they give us talking points, and we are not to deviate from those talking points. I should say this. I don't think that we'll get into anything too controversial on this episode, but I should go ahead and say the disclaimer. So just bear with me real quick. The views expressed in this podcast of those of the speakers alone do not reflect those of the Department of Defense, United States Navy, or any of its components. Okay, so now I said it, so we're totally good. We're safe. Okay. Yeah. So, well, no, like I really appreciate you coming on. It can be a little nerve-wracking. If I look back some of my old episodes, I was nervous, and it's like my show, and I was like, dude, like, what's the big deal? Like, you're just talking. You got a camera in front of you, but it's the same thing,
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
okay, so Sarah, and that's fine. You can call me CMC. I don't care. I'm gonna call you Sarah.
That's fine.
So I will tell you this before we really get going. So I served up in Misawa after McCampbell for 2 years, and they have this very interesting culture with first names. And so in the Navy, we reserve first names for like peer groups. And so it's kind of like, in the chief's mess, we call each other by our first names. And, JOs in the wardroom, pretty much everybody but like, XO and CO will call each other by their first name. You know what I mean? And in the Air Force, it's a little different. Like there's this. Most of the commanders will call their enlisted by their first name, like
Oh,
all the way down,
interesting.
kind of thing. And
Wow.
and I think that the commander and the senior enlisted leader behind closed doors, kind of like us, are kind of
Right.
first name basis to some extent.
Right.
But even there's kind of the first name, like like me talking to you, you're a mid-grade officer. Like I feel okay calling you by your first name. And by the way, you can
Yeah.
call me Dean. Absolutely. If you don't want to, that's fine. up to you.
No,
Okay.
I
Just,
will. I will. It's just, I think I'm still so junior that even calling like senior officers by their first names, it's still
yeah.
so foreign to me. If anything,
Yeah.
it's just because that's what I've always called you,
Yeah.
I'm
I
kind of
know.
dealing with some of that with our newly commissioned ensigns who are stashed at the UVA ROTC unit. They keep calling me ma'am, and I'm like, hey, you guys are in JOPA. Like, I'm only 5 years older than you. You can call me Sarah, and they're not biting on that at all.
They're
So
like,
I
no,
get
I'm
it.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, so speaking of ensigns, I want to go back further than that though. So if you've heard the podcast before, Sarah, then you know that I always start my podcast with this because I think that man, like our youngest, most early memories and childhood experiences really inform who we become as adults. I mean, that's not an
I agree.
opinion. That's obviously borne out through science. But I think
Hmm.
that those stories are super important as we kind of paint the picture of Sarah Cruz. So can you just kind
Yeah.
of like lay it on us, right? Like what's the Sarah Cruz like origin story?
Yeah. So I'm actually going to start from the very, very beginning because I think that's kind of important. I was born in Virginia Beach. My dad was stationed in Norfolk because he was a SWO. Um, he had just recently lat transferred to the intelligence community. So after about a year of me being born and living in the Virginia Beach area, we moved to Maryland because my dad was stationed at the Pentagon. He ended up going into the reserves. That was something that was really important to my parents. They wanted to have roots for our family. They didn't want to be a typical military family that's constantly moving. So the reserves were kind of the perfect compromise for my parents. My dad got to continue serving, and my mom got to be in Maryland or wherever they ended up, but they ended up in Maryland. So um, even though I was born in Virginia, I was raised in Maryland for my entire life. Diehard Maryland person. I think we have the coolest flag. Um, we're definitely obsessed with it, but that's okay. It's awesome. But my parents also believed in public education, so I did the whole public school system in Montgomery County, which is where I'm from. Um, and that was really great. My high school had the International Baccalaureate program, which is similar to AP but slightly different, but just as rigorous. So that was really good because it challenged me. Um, I think I had a very stereotypical suburban childhood. Our neighborhood was very close knit. My siblings and I all had a peer group that we kind of grew up together, if you will. We all did the swim team every summer together. We did high school sports together. So I competitively swam for 12 years. Um, I played field hockey for 4 years, but my real passion was lacrosse. So, I'm very, very competitive. I don't know if you actually know that about me, but when it comes to sports, I'm super competitive. And so a lot of my high school experience was on the sports teams, working hard in classes, because I knew ultimately that I wanted to do the Navy. I knew that at a very young age, from going to all the different ceremonies of my father, and all of the different unit functions of his. I knew I was going to do the Navy. I just wasn't sure if I was going to pursue the Naval Academy route or the ROTC route. Um, my uncle actually went to the academy, and my great grandfather was a professor there. So I talked to my uncle a little bit. I was like, should I go to the Naval Academy or not? And he was like, I don't think it's for you. Nothing against the academy. It's just, he was like, just knowing you and kind of what you want, it's probably just not, the best school for you. And, Annapolis is 45 minutes from where I grew up. Um, my great grandmother lived across the street from Navy football stadium. So I grew up going to Annapolis all the time. And I have so many family memories from Annapolis that I just didn't want to have that change from an academy experience. And I also felt it was really important to go away for college. So I chose to do the ROTC route. I applied to like 12 different schools. My mom was convinced that I like wouldn't get in anywhere for whatever reason. I just because it's so competitive. So I had to have so many
Mm.
buffer schools. So I applied to so many, but Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, not in Florida, is where
Yeah.
I ended up.
Ben
Um,
Roethlisberger.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
Cradle of Coaches. We just inducted Sean McVay. Uh, so Oxford was the perfect place for me. They always say that you kind of find your people in college, and I definitely found my people, my place. I just had the best experience there. But one of the reasons why I also wanted to do ROTC was because I wanted a normal college experience. I knew the military was going to take over my life. It was going to be 24/7. And I wanted to join a sorority. I wanted to do Greek life. I wanted to play club lacrosse. And so I was able to do all of that at Miami. And I made some of my best friends there, who I'm still really good friends with today. So, 4 years ROTC leading up to my senior year, I am getting ready to do ship selection. And I don't know if I want to say I was a little lost, but I kind of had this image in my head of what my life was going to look like. I thought I would find someone to marry in college and go to Norfolk and live close to home and then have a career similar to my dad's where I would lat transfer and go into the reserves. And um, after a little bit of soul searching and kind of pondering of what I really wanted, I decided I wanted a great adventure. I knew that eventually I was going to get married and have kids one day, so I should just go live overseas now while I can. I should just go have fun. So my family and I went to Spain my senior year of college to see if I wanted to go to Rota. And after being on the base for a couple hours and touring the town, I was like, this is not for me. Spain is beautiful and gorgeous, but Rota's a small town and it's far away from a big city. And I was more interested in going somewhere I'd never been before. So I ultimately ended up on Japan. And I was at a conference, a SWO conference in DC during winter break. And as a midshipman at these conferences, everyone loves you. Everyone wants to talk to you because you're the future of the Navy. So an officer came up to me and we were just talking about ship selection. And he's like, where do you want to go? And I was like, I don't really know what ship to pick. So he gave me his contact info, told me to call him when ship selection came and he would help me, figure out which ship was the best one to pick because I don't have access to schedules. Uh, so I called him and I told him what I wanted and he told me to pick McCampbell because he was like, Allison Christie is a phenomenal CO. You're going to love working for her. And I was like, oh, a female CO? That's huge. You don't really see a lot of those right now. So, and then he said, Pat Sullivan's fleeting up and he's great as well. And I said, great chain of command. Then he said, your ship schedule is going to be great. You'll qualify quickly. And I was like, this all sounds great. So I picked McCampbell and then 2 weeks after commissioning, there I was on a plane off to Japan. So that's how I ended up kind of, in Yokosuka. I think that's kind of important because that was kind of a really big decision. One that I don't think anyone in my family expected.
Hmm.
And I definitely started panicking a little bit as I was getting ready to move to Japan by myself, knowing absolutely no one out there, but I was excited for it. Then I ultimately did the tour on McCampbell. Homeport shifted to Portland, Oregon during COVID, which was a whole mess, something I'm sure we can dive into. But, and then, I transferred after a few months in Portland, did my pipeline and went to be the fire control officer on Spruance in San Diego. Checked in on a Tuesday and got underway on a Thursday in typical slow fashion.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have it any other way. I deployed with her all last year, and now I just got to my shore duty this January. So that's kind of the shortened version of my life thus far.
I like it. I'll tell you. So I wish I could remember his name, but I won't because I don't remember much about my college experience. But I went to college for 3 years before I joined the Navy. I didn't join until I was 21. Actually, I had a full ride to Lamar University, which is
Mhm.
in Beaumont, Texas, and
Mhm.
uh, I lost my scholarship after the first semester. Just, I don't know, man. It was hard to wake up. I was living by myself. I was like, man, this is a comfortable bed. And so I would
Yeah.
wake up for philosophy, honors philosophy of knowledge. That was like the only class I'd wake up for. And I look back on it, I'm like, dude, you could not get up for an 8 o'clock class. Like, what a fucking loser you were, you know? But I digress. No regrets. And I had a professor though, and I think this was probably a big influence on me joining the Navy. I was a sociology major, and because I was pre-law, that's a whole other story. But anyways,
Mhm.
this sociology professor, he told us, he said, "Hey man, I appreciate that you guys are going to college. That's great." He's like, "But honestly, if I were you, while you're young, just go travel, man." He's like, "Just go see the world. You don't have any
Yeah.
obligations. Go see the world. Go see something different." He was a sociology professor, so of course his perspective was that the experiences that you'll gain will open your eyes to just seeing the world in a different way. And so when you return to the United States, you're just going to see things differently because you've experienced
Absolutely.
other cultures and you've seen what real
Yeah.
poverty looks like. And he was absolutely right. Like, best decision I
Mhm.
ever made. Joined the Navy, same thing. Finished top of my class in A school, and I could have gone anywhere. I had my choice of orders, and it was between the Kitty Hawk in Yokosuka and the Essex in Sasebo, I remember. And quite frankly, I didn't know anything about either place. We didn't have smartphones at the time, so I couldn't really research it.
Mhm.
And so I just looked at the class of ship, and I looked at the aircraft carrier, and I was like, that seems kind of lame. It looks like you know, I didn't know anything about the Navy, man, right? I was like, just looks like
Right.
a floating airfield. Then I looked at Essex, I was like, oh shit, they got a well deck, and they have aircraft,
Mhm.
and they have Marines. I was like, that's a pretty dope mission, you know? And
Mhm.
not knowing that I was going to Sasebo, which is not a lot going on down there. So, but
Right.
anyways, it was great, man. I'm so glad that I listened to his advice.
Mhm.
And when I did join the Navy, instead of trying to be close to home, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go to Japan. And the experiences I've gained over here, just I mean, you couldn't pay enough money for all the things I've seen and done.
Mhm.
On the Navy's dime, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's a beautiful thing about the Navy, is you get to see the world like you truly do.
Oh, I completely agree. I look back at so many of my friends and people who I grew up with who stayed in the DC, Maryland, Virginia, we call it the DMV,
Hmm.
in that area. And, that's their choice. And, it's totally cool, but that's just not something that really ever interested me. Um, I always figured I might end up back in that area, but it was really important for me to just leave. My parents believed firmly in this philosophy of roots and wings. We want to give you the roots to come back home and visit us as often as you can, but we want to give you the wings to fly and chart your own path. And I'm so grateful that they have that philosophy because I really think that that is what really impacted myself and my siblings because all three of us have gone away for college. Um, and all three of us are just like off doing our own thing. And I tell everyone that living in Japan truly changed my life. I think I left Japan professional, growth aside and all the stuff that we went through on McCampbell. Personally, I grew and changed so much. I just have such a better appreciation for the Japanese people, the Japanese culture. Um, and so when Spruance pulled back into Yokosuka when I was deployed last year, it was like coming home. And I was just so thrilled to be back for the first time since I left it during COVID.
Yeah. So many people that serve over here want to come back. There's a reason for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a few reasons. Number one, the quality of life is great. The people are friendly, the food
Yeah.
is fantastic, it's safe.
Yes.
But also, if you're in the game, if you're a naval officer, if you're a senior enlisted, somebody that's been doing this for a little while at this point, um, you don't want to ride the bench, right? Like you kind of want to get
Right.
put in the game, and if you're going to get put in the game, like this is the place to do it. because
Oh,
you are going to
absolutely.
earn every bit of qualification that you get out here, you know. Um, I do want to talk, so I want to talk about qualification stuff on McCampbell for you, but I want to talk about lacrosse real quick, okay? Because like I did not picture you as a lacrosse player. I'm just going to be 100% as that because we haven't had this conversation. That's why I'm really interested, right? Because like I wrote down on my notes to ask like sports, hobbies, and I was like, man, it could either be sports, swimming. I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Or like maybe she did beauty pageants. I don't know, man, right? And so like
Yeah.
when you say lacrosse, like lacrosse is a rough sport, right?
Oh, it is intense. And if we ever lost a game in high school, my family avoided me for at least a day. I was so intense and like so into the game um that when we lost I did not take it well. And that's something I probably needed to work on and I think I've since worked on. But yeah, Maryland is a hub for lacrosse. Everyone does it. So I started playing in 7th grade mainly because all the other girls in the neighborhood were playing. And so we had a little carpool with all of us in the neighborhood so that our parents didn't always have to take us to every practice or every game. But we started then. And then what was special was that this group of girls, there was about 7 or 8 of us, I want to say, who started playing together in 7th grade. When we became freshmen in high school, all of us were on the varsity team and about half of us were starters, which was huge. Definitely helped boost my confidence as a freshman starting on the varsity team as a defender. Um, but I was intense. So getting the opportunity, I only played for a year in college, partially because my commitments with ROTC and my sorority were just too much, and I also fractured my hand, so I wasn't able to play for the rest of the season. But playing in college was great. It made me know that I was good enough to at least play at the club
Yeah,
collegiate level. I
yeah,
don't think I was, D3 level by any means, but it was fun to at least keep that competitive spirit going. So,
yeah. That's funny, man. I think I would not have pegged you for lacrosse, but now that we talk about it, I'm like, nah, actually that kind of makes sense. Because I have seen you flustered. You do a pretty good job of controlling it, but I have seen you flustered as a young ensign and JG on McCampbell. Because that was a rough
yes.
tour, man. That was a rough tour for everybody. And I'll tell you that like the more you do this Navy thing, and I'm at 22 years next month. Um, like some tours are just like that. Like while you're in it, it's just like, man, this is rough, bro. Like I hope I get out of this one alive, man, And then you look back on it and you have some regrets in the sense that that you wish you could have done things differently, but you also have these realizations that circumstances are what they are sometimes, and the people around you are the people that are around you, and you got to just do the best that you can and keep everybody safe, accomplish the mission, and you know, try to circle back with those people that maybe you didn't have the best relationship with, or that didn't do as well as they could have. But that's just the way it goes sometimes. And but you had a really good tour on McCampbell though, like qualified quickly. And then I mean you're like one of our go-to conning officers and officers of the deck. I mean, you know that, right?
Yes, I do. And I'll try and be as like humble about it as I can. Yeah, I mean, what my mentor who told me to pick McCampbell said was totally correct. I qualified quickly. I think my class, we were competitive amongst each other, but we also helped each other. Um, I think that crew, Wardroom Cheese Mess, was a special group. Because I still talk to everyone from McCampbell every day. And they're some of my best friends. And so, you know, I qualified quickly, partially because of the second tours and even the department heads all the way up to the XOCO, the Chief's Mess. Literally, so many people on that ship invested in me and
Mhm.
wanted to see me succeed and helped me learn. They took the time to teach me, whether it be the engineering plant, whether it be tactics or ship handling. Everyone took time to help me, and so yeah, I qualified quickly. And then my best friend on the ship, Lieutenant Lauren Larar, she and I studied for our EOW together. We're fortunate to have the engineering chiefs and our MPA really help us, teach us, train us to help get us that because, having that EOW letter is what helped me get my orders to Spruance, which was my number one pick. And so I owe so much of like who I am as an officer, as a person, to that McCampbell crew. And the Seventh Fleet credibility is definitely a thing because it only took me 2 weeks to requalify offshore the deck on Spruance. Granted, I was going from a Flight 2 Alpha to a Flight 2 Alpha, so it was like whatever. But
Yeah, sure.
one watch stands out in particular of when I kind of realized, oh, I'm actually pretty good. I know what I'm doing. Because
Yeah.
everyone always kind of doubts themselves when they're doing their job. But it was the 3 to 6 watch on Spruance. We're making our way back to San Diego, and I kind of see a fishing fleet on the horizon. CPAs are within reporting criteria, but nothing that I'm uncomfortable with. So I call the captain in accordance with, the standing orders, make the report. And he's like, "Are you comfortable?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm comfortable. If anything gets out of sort, I'll let you know." So we ended up having a rogue fishing vessel. I called him to the bridge. We had to sound 5 short. That kind of sorted itself out. But then when he gets up there, when I said fishing fleet, he's like, "Okay, she's got it. She's coming from 7th Fleet." But then when he gets up there, he's like, "Oh my God, this is a huge fishing fleet. Very
Yeah.
rare for San Diego waters. If you had been a normal San Diego offshore the deck, you would have
Yeah.
called me up 30 minutes ago. But
Right.
when you're in the East China Sea or the South China Sea and all that water is just so congested and you're taking CPAs well within, 2 miles, well within a
Yeah.
mile,
Yeah.
like a 2-mile CPA is whatever." So that's kind of when I really appreciated my 7th Fleet upbringing, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And if you look at um it, again, when you're in it, man, and this goes for any hard thing in life. If you're
Yeah.
running a marathon at mile 17, you're like, this is terrible. Like I might
Yeah.
actually die, you know?
Yep.
If you're climbing Fuji and you're 500 feet from the top, you're like, I don't know if
Oh
I'm going to
God.
make this.
It was
You
me
know,
on Fuji. I didn't think I was gonna make it.
right? And if you're on McCampbell, at month 24, you might be like, I got to get the fuck up out of here. You know,
Yeah. It
but
was it was fun.
um, but then you look at the result. So, whether it's um, Senior Chief Paul, Senior Chief
Mhm.
Fender,
Mhm.
Captain, um, you know, uh, well, I'm an idiot, Captain Hayes, right?
Mhm.
Um, Warrant Officer Yang, Senior
Mhm.
Chief Chang. I mean, just go down the
Mhm.
list, right? Like, um, everybody that was there put in the work
Mhm.
and were recognized and moved forward based on their, leadership potential that they had demonstrated on McCampbell. And so, like, it's so like cliche, like iron sharpens iron and forged in the
Mhm.
crucible and like all these sayings, but those things are only cliche because they're true, you know? Like
Absolutely.
the hard times make you better. And like karma or life or whatever you want to call it, God, the universe, like rewards people that go through hard shit, you know?
Yeah.
And I think McCampbell is just a perfect example of that, and to see you and
Yeah.
like all of your fellow JOs that are doing great things, whether it's in the Navy or not, like
Mhm.
I think that if they had had an easy life, then, in that first tour in the Navy, then like maybe they would be going through those challenges as a lieutenant. instead of as
Right.
an ensign. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I look back at those times and I'm like, wow, I can't believe we did all that stuff. I can't believe I survived that. I think it really tested so many people's mental fortitude. And I will say by the end of my tour in McCampbell, I was definitely running on fumes.
Hmm.
And when I had my checkout, my end of tour checkout, they were like, Sarah, you give 110% to everything that you do. So I expect you to be on fumes because you're giving it your all in this tour. I will say, I definitely think COVID and, from the COVID patrol to the COVID home port shift to being in Portland, Oregon, that was like a whole thing. The last time, I think you saw me, I was engaged at the time, and we happy mutual we mutually agreed to separate, but my engagement ended when I was in Portland. And so I was taking a huge personal toll while being completely isolated from everything in Portland. So by the end of that tour, I was like, I am ready to leave. I have been tested, my mental fortitude has been tested a lot. I
Yeah.
don't want to be tested anymore right now. So I was sad to go, but happy to move on.
Yeah. I hear you, man. I think, those COVID years really taxed everybody.
Yeah.
And you just can't help but like look at it and be like I want to give you a free pass, man, but like I'm having a hard time doing it now. Like I don't know that anybody gets a free pass on that one, man. Like I'm again, I have a disclaimer, and this is my personal opinion. Like I'm not giving you a free pass on that, man. Like there was a time early on in that when we knew it wasn't what we thought it was,
Mm-hmm.
and because of the powers that be, and political pressure, leaders that I truly respect, just did things they shouldn't have, man. And so like and I'm saying what, our E5s and E6s are saying. Trust me, right? They talk to me. And um so you wonder why we're 20,000, short of our accession numbers. Well, gee, I
Yeah.
wonder why, you know? And so like,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, I won't go down that path too far. It's just like those COVID years, it's one thing if you look back on it, it's like, man, we all rallied around and like we did what we had to do, which is like half the truth. It's more like we all rallied around and we did what we probably didn't have to do. And
Well,
that's a hard thing, man. You know?
it's interesting as I'm teaching college students who half of their schooling was during COVID. And so I casually bring up, our COVID patrol and Pierside Liberty and all this stuff, and they're just like, you did what? You spent how many
Yeah.
days under your way without pulling in? And so it's interesting like trying to explain that to them, but also interesting listening to their perspective just because I also kind of feel like because we were underway, we missed out on so much stuff. Like my whole
Mhm.
family quarantined together, like my core unit, and then I'm over here on the other side of the world, definitely
Yeah.
missing out on family bonding. Although I'm sure
Yeah.
they would probably say that they were ready to kill each other by like day 3 or whatever, but
Yeah.
still, nonetheless, they had certain bonding moments that I
Hmm.
had with my McCampbell brothers and sisters.
That's
So
very
it's at
true.
least been interesting to hear my students' perspective and then blow their
Hmm.
minds when I tell them
Yeah.
what we did and how we watched Tiger King in the wardroom on Wi-Fi. How we
Oh
would yell at
yeah.
them try to get off. So
Yeah. Yeah,
experiences for
we watched Contagion.
oh
I
my
think
god.
Contagion is the name of the one with
Yeah, Brad Pitt.
anyway, yeah. So we watched it like probably a dozen times in the Chiefs mess. We're like, this is it.
Oh.
This is it. I don't know if you remember when we brought on that Fleet Surgical team
Yes.
and some other guys, and I'll just leave it like that.
Yeah.
And and like, man, I'm in the Chiefs mess. They're like, dude, are we like actually the last ship? I was like, bro, like I don't even know. I'm being 100 with you. I don't know. I don't know what we're doing. They're like, if we start cruising north toward the Arctic, That's it, bro. That's it. We're the last ship.
Well, this is when I know I'm getting old, and I don't even think I'm that old. I made a last ship reference in my navigation class, and
I
my
had no clue.
students are like, "What's that?" And I was like, "What's the last ship? What do you mean? What, like, you guys need to go watch this because it's great."
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's cringy, but it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, "Wow, I am kind of old if you don't know that reference."
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll make Hunt for Red October references sometimes when I was on Fitz. So when I was on Fitz, our sonar senior chief, he's a W4 now. Actually, we're stationed together again
Oh
here at
wow.
SRF. And when when I was on Fitz, we were the first ones with the AV-15 mod out here,
Mhm.
and so like we did a lot of ASW, just put it that way.
Mhm.
And we were on some real world tracks. And anytime that we were hunting subs, man, old Lefty, old Senior Chief Lesticow, he would put on like the sweater, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like
Yeah.
the sweater thing, right? He would straight have his sweater on in combat, and that dude wouldn't sleep for like days, man. Like you go into Chief's mess, he'd be catching like an hour nap on the couch, right back into combat. But he only wore it. That was the only time he wore it is when we were actually like hunting subs. So yeah, it was funny. But anyways, so went to Spruance. How long were you
Mhm.
there? That was a 2 year tour.
It was only 18 months, and I ended up doing the
Okay.
full 18 months. I I knew Spruance was gonna have a good schedule.
Hmm.
The way second tour detailing works, you put in your preferences, but you don't get to select the ship the same way that you do for first tours. So I was
Hmm.
actually very, very lucky that I was able to get my first choice, FCO San Diego Flight 2 Alpha, with a good schedule. So
Yeah.
and I had great leadership um, throughout all of Spruance. So I requalified. Um, so when I did my check in with my CU and my EXO, and I said, here are my goals for this tour. You know, I want to mentor the first tours. I really want to develop them as best as I can. And then, you know, kind of be a leading shoulder for the department heads. Because sometimes I feel like second tours have the most power because
Mm.
they're on the deck plates with the junior officers and the sailors, but they're also helping the department heads. And sometimes you even have to see an exo's ear, depending on like what it is. So I really wanted to really just emulate my second tour mentors. So I said, mentor the first tours. That's one of my goals. In terms of my qualifications, I want to requalify OD, CDO, ATWO. I want to qualify air, surface, and TAO. And they were like, okay, let's work on your OD requal first, and then we'll take everything else in baby steps. But, you know, I don't think they realized just how determined I was to hit all
Right.
these milestones. And so, you know, I qualified air very quickly because we were underway all summer, you know, doing all of our workups for deployment. And I got to go to Fallon for advanced air training with the whole air wing and other air teams on the other ships in the strike group, which was actually phenomenal. Some of
Nice.
the best training
Got
I've
to do
ever
SWAT.
received. Say again?
You got to go do SWAT, right?
Oh, no.
Or is it
Oh,
SPARP?
yes.
SPARP.
No, we
SPARP.
did SWAT.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm mixing up all
Yeah.
my stuff, but we did do SWAT,
Yeah.
and that was great.
Yeah.
So I got qualified air, Comp 2X, I got
Hmm.
qualified surface, and then deployment hit, and I was like, okay, I'm working on my TAO, and they were like, okay. Fortunately, my command was, you know, they were very supportive of it, and
Good.
so I was able to board for it just as we get pulled into Sasebo, which was fun to be back in Sasebo, but also to be celebrating my TAO qualification. It was also just a huge, besides the professional accomplishments, just a huge personal accomplishment that I had
Hmm.
hit my goals and was now kind of like, okay, what next? But so I had a very successful tour on Spruance, and I loved my division. I had some really phenomenal sailors that just being able to lead them was great. They were, you know, sitting next to me at the MSS console or at the RSC console and just, you know, talking. You know, we'd get like learning where they're from, or them helping me come up with my command philosophy, or
Yeah.
maybe them poking fun at me here and there. But I had a really great tour on Spruance.
Yeah.
It'll never really replace, my McCampbell experience, just because the two are different, with McCampbell being fully
Hmm.
FDNF and Spruance being a full deployment.
Hmm.
It was interesting to see the differences between the two kind of underways. But yeah, I came back home to San Diego. We had a tiger cruise on Spruance too, so my dad came underway for that, which was interesting. But overall, it was a really great tour.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, my speaking of, your dad coming for a tiger cruise, I'll share a story with you that's hilarious. So I had a Y2 on Fitzgerald. His name was Y2 Joshua Lovely, and he was a great kid, man, but he reminded me a lot of myself when I was young, like pretty rowdy kid, and
Mhm.
liked to party, real popular, but was really, really good at his job, really good at
Yeah.
damage control. Um, did VBSS, so he was like, he was one of those yeomen that
Mm,
like, yeah, I got a day job, but I'm a sailor, professional mariner. And
yeah.
anyways, so it comes time for him to reenlist, and I was his senior chief, and his reenlistment request passed my desk. And I get it, and um, and it's the location. It says Chuhai Stand. I was like, this fucking kid, man, what is he doing, man? But hold on. And then it said reenlisting officer. It said Commodore Lovely. Yeah, which we all knew his dad was a Commodore of one of the Desrons in Mayport. And just so happened his dad was going to be in town, and he asked his dad to reenlist him at the Chuhai stand. His dad said yes.
Oh,
I was like, this is fucking awesome.
oh, that's so cool.
So I bring it up, I
Well,
bring it up to XO, and XO sees the same thing. He's like, "Are you
yeah.
serious? Am I taking this as the captain?" I was like, "Oh yeah, you kind of have to." And sure enough, man, sure enough, we're all standing outside of Old Man Chuhai stand with Commodore Lovely, re-enlisting Y2 Lovely. It was one of the
Oh my
greatest days of my
God.
fucking life. I swear to God, it was. But
Oh, that's
anyways,
awesome.
yeah. So
Yeah,
yeah,
my dad was like a kid in a candy shop on that cruise. I
yeah.
He was like, he sent me the instruction that said retired military officers can still wear their uniforms, and I was like,
Mhm.
the only uniform item you are allowed to bring on this cruise are your steel toe boots,
Yeah.
nothing else. Um, I was like, you are here as a father.
Yeah.
Because my dad had been retired for a couple years. He retired in 2019, and it was 2022. So I think he really missed the Navy, and
Yeah.
just the opportunity to go on a warship, go underway
Hmm.
again, was just so great. And
That's
he
awesome.
was just running around the ship. They had a PQS. He was getting it signed off after
Yeah.
the cruise. Um, my sailors were like, Sarah, or Miss Cruz, we really miss your dad. And I was like,
Yeah. Like, hold
okay,
on,
well,
man.
he's not coming back.
Hold
Back with
on.
me. Sorry.
Yeah. So you did Spruance, and then to the job that you're at now.
I'm a ROTC instructor at the University of Virginia. And
Right. So
so,
did you go from Spruance to ROTC?
yes,
Okay.
like
Okay.
I had a month of leave, and then I came straight to Charlottesville.
Okay.
Um,
So at UVA.
yes.
Oh boy.
And I know. So my brother goes to Virginia Tech. So when I got my orders here, he was like, "You're going to my number one rival school." And he was like, they're called orders, first of all. And second of all,
Yeah.
because I applied through the talent management program, and I was looking at the list of schools, and my goal was always to come back to the East Coast. My number
Hmm.
one area was the DC area, but I was going to take anything as north as New York, or as south as like South Carolina.
Hmm.
And so when I saw UVA, my captain was like, "Sarah, that's the one." And I said, "Yes, sir." So
Yeah.
it's 2 hours from home. It's 2 hours from tech. I'm the perfect middle ground. I'd missed so much of my family's life events, being in Japan and San
Hmm.
Diego. Um, and those were choices that I made and I'd come to terms with, but I really wanted to be back home for a little
Hmm.
bit. And getting a master's from UVA will carry a lot of weight, because it's a great institution.
Hmm.
um, But really, I picked these orders to be closer to my family because that's what really mattered most to me.
Sure, I understand.
Oop, that's
Shut
my
up,
uncle. I'm
Siri.
sorry.
Yeah.
But so
So
that's
can you explain to me, I guess I'm not as familiar as I should be. So you're at UVA for getting your secondary education, so working on your master's degree, and at the same time you are a ROTC instructor. Is that right?
yes,
So
that's
how does, I
exactly right.
guess, like what type of stuff are you instructing? Is it military programs or like can you just kind of break down, I guess, what that looks like for you?
Yeah, so I'm as a graduate of the ROTC program. I was really excited to come back. I now have a better appreciation for what my lieutenants did for me back then. But I teach two classes, one class in the fall, one class in the spring. My fall class is called Naval Operations, and what that is, I always cover rules of the road and moboards. I do advanced ship handling. I do, law of the sea, and then I get into the warfare areas. I talk about air warfare, surface warfare, ASW, strike warfare, really kind of tying in all of the things that they learned because I'm teaching seniors in the fall. So they've already
Mm,
been taught about ships' weapon systems. They've already been taught about ships' engineering systems. All of this at an unclassified level, too,
sure.
for the
Yeah.
record.
Right.
So I'm teaching them kind of the very basics of warfare because a lot of them are either going to go to the fleet or they're going to go to flight school in Pensacola or nuke school in Charleston. Uh, so I'm really excited to teach that class because I love tactics. But that's in the fall, and in the spring I teach navigation. So we cover rules of the road and moboards more in depth, and this is to sophomores. So they're learning the very basics about nav aids, charts,
Mm,
how to drive a ship, um, all the different things that make you a professional mariner.
right.
Um, so I teach those, but I'm also a year group advisor. So I'm always the sophomore year group advisor, which is kind of cool because they're no longer newbies. They kind of have a good idea of like what military bearing is like, what they how to wear the uniform, how to address me, all this stuff. So they're still a little too rigid, some in my opinion. We're trying to stop making them so rigid and be normal people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mentor them in terms of like where do they want to go with their career, because at this point they may or may not know what warfare community they want to go into. We only commission in the RGC program into aviation, surface, submarine, spec ops, and then sometimes some restricted communities, but that's on a case by case basis. um, and then we have other like unit activities. I also have a lot of collaterals. We don't have an HR person, so I'm the administrative officer. So I am doing a lot of PS functions, and I
Yay.
have a lot more appreciation. I mean, I always appreciated the PSs and was always very grateful, but I'm doing all of the travel vouchers. I'm doing all
Yeah.
the pay issues. Like I have
Cool.
learned a lot. So my collaterals take up a lot of my time. So that's
Yeah.
kind of like what a ROTC instructor
Hmm.
does. Yeah.
Okay. And then so do you go to school full time also? Like do you have a full load on top of that?
Yeah. I'm a little nervous.
Hmm.
Nothing, if I can handle my Campbell, I can handle this. That's what I keep telling myself.
Yeah.
Um, I am taking a full load of classes next semester. But all of my classes are in the afternoon, so my mornings will be more geared towards helping the midshipmen, and my afternoons will be more of like dealing with my own personal stuff. And my command is very supportive. They know that for um, us instructors coming to get our masters is the purpose of us coming to be here to work at an RGC unit, but also, you have to have a master's if you want to take command. So
Mm,
that's part of the reason why I need to get my master's now.
right. And so and are you there for 2 years? Is it 2 years?
3 years,
Three.
3 year
Nice.
orders.
Perfect.
Yeah,
That's
pretty
awesome,
sweet.
man.
Yeah.
That's 3 years of good shore duty.
Yeah. And so my first couple months here have been interesting. You said something to me. I don't remember if it was like one on one or in a group setting, but you said people who thrive in high intensity, high stressful environments are always constantly seeking it out when they're meant to be on shore duty. And
Yeah.
that always stuck with me, and I was like, no way that's true. And so here I am on shore duty, super stressed because I'm creating all this work for myself. And
Hmm.
I was like, damn it, CMC was right. um,
Yeah. Yeah.
not the first time
Oh, I
I've
know.
thought
Trust
that
me. Yeah.
was right, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
I've created a lot of stress for myself that I really don't need,
Yeah.
just because we thrive in that.
Yeah. I mean, look, when I told you that, and I've told many people that, I'm telling you that from personal experience, that
Hmm.
when you go into these environments that should be a certain pace, I won't say necessarily slow pace, but they have a tempo that is not this high intensity tempo like we experienced in FDNF on these ships. And it's supposed to be that way. Like people
Right.
learn better, people are able to do their jobs better, we can plan far into the
Hmm.
future. Like there is a tempo that supports the mission, right?
Right.
And
Right.
when you get transplanted into that and you're that person that's like, oh, we got to hurry the fuck up, and nobody wants to hurry up, and now it stresses you out, and then so
Hmm.
like subconsciously you start doing things. It could be that you're drinking too much, you're not exercising the way that you should, or whatever, right? You take on these habits that induce stress, and I've done it, man, in Hawaii, absolutely 100%. Like, and so I learned my lesson there, and have not done it again. But yeah, just if I'm just going to give you some advice, and it sounds like you're already working through some of these things. Um, so you've got the job, you've got the school, you're close to family. So you got kind of these key components in your life that are the things that you wanted in this assignment. You know, I don't know, maybe find something new, right? Um, I'll tell you this, and take it or leave it. You've got a great personality for this type of stuff, right? It's like content creation, and it may or may not be something that you want to do, right? But I will tell you that like right now in our society, in our Navy, like we need people like you, to some extent, old heads like me that are able to do these things and unafraid to kind of put ourselves out there. Like I think society and the Navy needs more of that, because I think that I think that trust in the military is eroding in American society right now for a variety of reasons. And I think that trust in leadership is eroding from our junior people as well. And so like the way you combat that is that you just show them who you are authentically. And you can't do
Hmm.
that in like 5 minute snippets, like standing at quarters. Like they don't know who the fuck you are. You're also not
Right.
going to go out drinking with your folks, right? Like can't do that either. And so like how do you transmit who you are? I think it's got to be in long form type things like this, right? Like where, whoever watches this, and maybe some of your students will, and maybe some sailors out there will, and oh yeah, some of the general public will. Like if they stick with it for the full hour and some change, and listen to this conversation, then they're going to walk away from it with like a different impression. Like because we're two pretty normal as it
Mhm.
goes. Like you're a lieutenant who's done really well. I'm a CMC who's done really well. But at the big scheme of things, I'm not the MCPON and you're not CNO, right? Like we're pretty normal folks, right? But
Yeah.
these conversations are the ones I think that matter the most,
Yeah.
because it shows who we are, like as people in the profession of arms. So I don't know, man. My point is that like um, I don't know. Just think about it, right? Like this could be something that you could foray into, and you would do well with it, because you seem very confident, right? And just kind of like confident in telling your story, which is
Hmm.
powerful, right? Just telling your story and people hearing it and identifying with the things that they see in themselves, like that's powerful, man. And it can really it can really kind of change things, and move people in a direction. So, anyways,
Yeah.
man, I'm proud of you for what it's worth. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
okay, so at ROTC, you're going to be there for 3 years. Um, and so that's going to put you at probably what, about eight years in by that time?
Just about. I transfer in 2026. So yeah,
Hmm.
about 8 years. And then I
Okay.
head up to department school
So
in Newport, which will be.
you've already screened, you've accepted the bonus, like
Oh
you're
yeah.
fucking going for it.
Oh, yeah. I
Like,
signed. Oh my gosh, this is, I don't know if it's a crazy story, but so a month and a half into deployment, I'm underway, and I'm like, dang, this is awesome. I love being Hayes Gray underway, and I'm like, I think I'm gonna sign. I like spent a week talking to different people I trusted on Spruance, and then I had a lot of really personal conversations with my captain, actually, like just like, sir, like, what advice do you have? I've made a pros and cons list. We went through it, and he gave me some really great advice. Just he's like, you have a plan if you were to get out of the Navy, but there's no guarantee that you're gonna love what you do. Like, it's great that you have a plan, but the grass isn't always greener. And you know that you love what you do right now. And we're not asking you to sign on for 20 years. We're asking you to sign on for another commitment. So if you want to get out afterwards, that's fine too. And so he's like, you're thinking super long term, you know,
yeah.
don't think so far into the future. I understand you're a planner, but like, break it up, because you'll be in, once you finish your department head tour, you'll be at like the '04, about like 12 years in or so. And he's like, and that's when you can make another decision point. Because the one
Hmm.
thing that was really weighing heavy on me was, as a female, I have to take in consideration, when can I have a child. I was like, so like last year I mean, I'm still not engaged nor married, and I'm not having a child anytime soon. So it's like, if I do decide to have a family and have that whole thing, like, when will I be able to do that? And so we kind of talked through all that and stuff, and I was like, okay, I'm going to sign. I was really nervous to tell my parents. And so I called them and was like, I'm staying in the Navy. I'm signing department head, and I really hope you'll support me. And my parents were like, of course we're going to support you. Like, it's your life. If this is what you want to do, like, we love you and we support you. Like, maybe you should think about it just a little longer. Like, because they didn't know about all the conversations that I had had, but they just wanted
Hmm.
me to make sure that I was certain about it and stuff. And I was like, no, I'm certain, I'm going to sign. They were like, okay, like, good for you. Because my dad didn't do department head at sea. Neither did my grandfather or my great grandfather. So I'm kind of like the first one in my direct like line to do this, and I'm kind of like charting my own path that's different from my father's. And so I think that's kind of like what scared me a little bit. But so I signed a month and a half into deployment, and I don't regret it at all. I was so happy to continue on. And the only things that were ever really dissuading me not to wasn't because I don't love the Navy. It was just the whole like personal family aspect of it that really made me
Yeah.
pause for thought.
Yeah. No, I get it. I think that that's one thing that people don't appreciate fully is a woman's journey through the military, but specifically in the Navy. Um, when when you if you intend on having kids and you want to have kids, like you can do it. But it's gonna be hard, you know. And I will say this too, though, that I think that from personal experience, that toll that it takes on fathers is huge too. It really is, man. Like when I look back in my career, out of the first 20, I mean, I was on an FDNF warship, 14 of that 20. And so like
Mm-hmm.
I was gone for 14 years. Let's just be real about it. Even
Yeah,
if I was in home port, I wasn't home. I had duty every four
yeah.
days, and if I was home, I was just like not present at all, and like um and so like, just it's hard to explain to people, especially if you do a lot of time out here, but really any Navy command.
Mm-hmm.
Um and it's not to say that, any service is better or harder than the others, but like certainly just the way that we deploy and the way that we serve is so much different from, let's say, the Air Force.
Yeah.
It's like it's easier. It's just easier, man. I don't care what anybody says, it's easier. And so like I sympathize with, young women like you that have to kind of make that decision. And kind of in a sense, make that sacrifice for some time, and you don't know how long that time is, right? Um, so I can
Yeah.
imagine that's kind of a hard decision.
Yeah, it's something that I've wrestled with, and I'm very open about it, and I've actually been able to use kind of my experience with to help mentor my female midshipmen because I went to college believing in the fairy tale that I would find some lucky gentleman, get married right out of college, go do the Navy thing and then get out. And then that didn't happen, I still believed that I would, marry young, and I did get engaged young, and it just didn't work out. But I believed that I would have this fairy tale because that's kind of what society tells us, that we're going to have this fairy tale of getting married young, having kids young, and so when that didn't happen, here I am, 25 on deployment. I called it my quarter life crisis. I really, when you're in the middle of the ocean and you have all this time to think, I really just thought about what is really important to me, what matters to me. It's okay that I am not married and I don't have kids yet. It's at night there. I can do that later in my life. So I really came to terms with it. It was quite a journey. It was not a pretty journey. Uh, there may have been quite a few tears in Sasebo with a Chuhai involved, but
Yeah. Hey, they'll do it,
I,
man.
I came to terms with it, and I do not regret it at all, and I'm really happy with like where I'm at. But it's a personal journey that I think every young woman who's in the service, no matter Navy, Marine Corps, Army, Air Force, because I have Army friends who've kind of had to make that similar decision of like what they want with their career. It's just something personal that everyone has to come to terms with on their own. So
Yeah, it is. And look, it's doable. I mean, um, you look at VCNO, right? Admiral Franchetti. I mean, she did it.
yeah,
There's been plenty of very successful women that were able to manage both of those things. And um, I think what I appreciate about you and what I always appreciated about Cap Christie, Allison, it's my girl, by the way, you know that, like, that's my homegirl.
yeah,
But
yeah.
what I always appreciate about her and what I appreciate about you and is that like you acknowledge that you are a woman in service, but you are like just an awesome naval officer, and that's enough. Like we all know that you're a woman, but like we don't have to talk about the fact that you're a woman because you're just the best, right? And I think that the Navy specifically is a service where women have a real opportunity to like really break through that glass ceiling just based on intellect and instinct and intelligence. And I think you've been a perfect example of that. And I hope that some of your students see that and kind of follow that course, right? So, anyways,
Yeah.
it's
Well, I
worth.
appreciate you saying
Um,
that. I hope they
yeah,
do too.
yeah.
So
Okay, so we're gonna get through ROTC, and then we're gonna go do a department head tour, and then are we going all the way? Are we going all the
command.
way with it? What are we doing?
Yeah, I oh, so another sea story. We were pulling into Yokosuka, and I told the SWO, I was like, I am going to be the OD. Now, to
Yeah.
be fair, I'm like the only person who's done that transit like
Hmm.
a million times. And
Right.
I actually had sit downs with my captain in the XO and went through the whole transit with them based on my experience, which was really cool that they trusted me, not only to be the OD, but to come to me to just to discuss what I knew in my experience. We're transiting inbound. Me and the captain are making decisions about contact management, and we're doing our thing. And that like moment of inbound transit to Yokosuka was when I was like, I can do this. Like, I can be a CO, because if you can handle the inbound Yokosuka, you can handle anything, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Just from all the different sea anchors that I've done. And so so that's when I really was like, okay, I really want this. I want command. I just love this so much. So I told my parents that. I was like, I'm in it for command, man. And then I guess they told my grandparents because my grandfather was like, you need to read Destroyer Captain by Admiral Stavridis about his time as a CO of the Barry, just all of his thoughts. And I was like, okay, so I'm in it for command. The only thing that would ever potentially take me off the path comes back to if I have a family and just
Hmm.
the personal aspect. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna, ignore that. But I really do think it'd be so cool to have command of warship, and I want to do it in Yokosuka. I want to
Yeah. There
be
you
tip
go.
of the spear CO. So,
Yeah. There
so
you
that's
go.
yeah, that's it.
Well, I mean, if you, I mean, we may need your services out here in a few years as a department head, and
Well,
I'll just leave it at that at the open source level.
well, all of my second tour mentors keep telling me, "Oh, I can't wait for you to come be my relief." And I was like, "Don't bring that bad juju on me." I I don't want to go to Yokosuka only because like I know how intense it is, and I don't want to get
Yeah.
burned out. Um, and I want to go to Pearl because it's somewhere new,
Yeah.
and different. But if I were to go back to
Hmm.
Yokosuka, I would not
Hmm.
go kicking and screaming. I certainly would. Uh, hopefully, the department head detailer does not listen to this and sends me over there. But
Yeah.
um,
It's like,
Pearl,
oh, where
and
would you like to go?
yeah,
Yeah.
Pearl,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
Japan for command. That's start ending it if I get out after my command tour. Ending it where I started it
Hmm.
is kind of the grand
Yeah.
scheme of it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's kind of these bookends to careers. They happen pretty infrequently, and it's always fun when you see it, right?
Mhm.
Like, if I were to leave here and finish in Sasebo, um, which I'm not, by the way, like if my detailer is listening, which I know you don't, so fuck you. uh, um, if I were to, end up in Sasebo, it wouldn't be the worst thing, at the end of the day,
Yeah,
But for me personally, I don't want to leave Yokosuka. So
yeah.
I've got two in high school still. I've got one in college in Texas, and
Mhm.
um, so one's going to be a junior next year, one's going to be a freshman. And the
Oh
commitment I
wow.
made to them when we got back in 2018 to McCampbell, I looked at all three of them. I was like, I don't care what I have to do. That's how I end up in Misawa. I don't care what
Mm.
I have to do. If I have to go geo, whatever I got to do. I was like, I'm not moving y'all again. Like, y'all are
Yeah.
going to all get to graduate here. And I've been able to uphold that commitment, and I will be at least to my junior, to Hazel. And then so I just need
Mhm.
2 more years in Yokosuka. And I've told my detailer this, like real talk, like, hey, I ain't fucking
Yeah.
leaving. And
Yeah.
and then once I get her through high school, man, like that might be it for me. That might be it, like 2027
Really?
ish. Yeah. I'm ready to get back to Texas. I got some things I want to do.
Yeah.
I've kind of via this podcast and some of the people that's allowed me to meet outside the Navy. There's some advocacy stuff I want to do. I'll be honest about it, like with psychedelic treatment for veterans. Like I want to advocate that. I want to use my position as a command master chief, with TBI myself to advocate for those things. I want to
Yeah.
experience those things and to help me kind of heal some of my trauma. And
Yeah.
and there's some things I want to do in Texas, man. I want to open a gym. I want to, and nothing crazy, like a place with the shit that I like to do, and
Yeah.
open a little cafe out by the lake. My
I
my
love
mom lives out there. I want to be home. My mom's getting older. She's 73. Like,
yeah.
I was gone when my dad died. My wife was gone when her mom died. And like, so for this one, it's like, look, dude, I have the opportunity. Like, I want to be there. I want to be there. If that's 20 years,
Yeah.
great. Like, okay, cool. Then I get to
Yeah.
spend the last 20 years with her. And so yeah, I'm not gonna make it to 30. Like, I've got things that I need to do, and I'm running out of fucking time. Is the
Yeah.
way I look at it. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I get it. That makes
I'm
sense.
excited for you, man, because you're like right at the. I mean, um, you're right at the gates of when it gets a lot harder, but you also have a much larger impact. And once those
Yeah.
gates open, like you really find out a lot about yourself. And
Mhm.
by the time that you would be in command, you've really kind of figured out who you are as a person, and you have to know that
Right.
once you're in command, right? Like
Yeah.
you can't be in command trying to figure out, where your moral compass is, like, but you find a lot of those things out in these next 5 to 6 years, as you
Yeah.
go through kind of the crucible a little bit, you know what I mean, as a department head.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
On my tour on Spruance, I wrote a do's and do nots for when you're a department head. Just
yeah,
like little observations that I had because I didn't know I never wanted to forget those moments, especially as a first tour, like when you feel frustrated. So I have a book of it's my command prep book. I'm such a nerd, and people will probably make fun of me for this, but I don't care. Like I have lessons learned from watching my leaders, things
hmm
that they wish they'd done differently, and I think it's important to take away from that. And so I'm slowly working my way through kind of like who I will be in command, but even like who I will be as a department head. I am
yeah,
excited for the greater impact that you'll have, and even like with midshipmen coming to me, not sure what they want to do in the Navy, not really sure who they are. Like it's been so great to mentor them one on one. It's been really special to me, just to try and help them because I'm a big believer in servant leadership. Um, and taking care of my people is something that really means the most to me. So being able to help my midshipmen and just be there for them, even if they want to talk about personal things that they're dealing with or professional things, it's been even the few months that I've been here, it's been really rewarding. So I'm looking forward to the greater impact that I'll have, as a
yeah,
department head and in command.
yeah. So I'll give you just one last piece of advice, and then we'll get ready to wrap this thing up there, Sarah. So I used to tell, I mean, really anybody, but specifically like first classes, six, seven, eight. And when we would do like career development boards, and one of the things I share with them, I said, hey man, like if if you want to be, senior chief fender, right? Which he did make senior chief, by the way. Like if you want to be senior chief fender, um, the time to start acting like senior chief fender is not the day that you get frocked. Like the day that we pin on senior chief anchors, you can't all of a sudden like think that you're going to be any different. And so, how
Mhm.
you imagine Senior Chief Fender will be, how he will lead, how he will act, how he will take care of his people, how he'll be at home, whatever, right? Like, however you imagine that guy being, you like now's the time. Now you start being that guy. And so, I'll give you that same advice that, like, the department head that you want to be, and it sounds like you're already kind of doing that, by taking notes with your do's and don'ts, and like who you want to be as Lieutenant Commander Cruz, right? Like that's how you start behaving now, and then
Right.
and then then that prepares you, when you're Commander Cruz, right? And
Mhm.
you're the CEO of one of these warships out here. Like it's kind of the same thing. You just always think forward, like the person I want to be, I need to start being that person now, like right now.
Yeah.
Then you have time to fuck it
Yeah.
up. That by the time that you actually get that rank or that position or that place in life, that like once you actually have it, you've already made a lot of the mistakes that you can't make once you're in
Mhm.
that position. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
um, anyways, the world is yours, Sarah. I am super, super excited for you. Um, this episode is just one of my favorite. Honestly, it's been great talking to
Oh,
you and catching up.
yeah.
Um, I'm serious, man. It's been really nice. Like, just a great flow, and we also had great Wi-Fi. Americable didn't fuck me, so well, it was good, right? Um,
Yes,
but
absolutely.
I'll ask you: is there anything that you'd like to just leave the audience with? A parting shot? Any last thoughts?
I'll say something since you said so many nice things about me. I'll say something that I've always appreciated about you. You know, I was such a brand new ensign when I showed up to McCampbell. Like I had no idea what I was doing, and so I always appreciated that you had such an open door policy where I could just come to you. And I really attribute a lot of where I am, to some of our one-on-one conversations and the mentorship that you gave me. Even reaching out to you when I was on Spruance, dealing with my own issues there. I've always appreciated that. I've had you as honestly a mentor rank aside, you find these people that you really respect and who've made a huge impact on you. And you kind of like, I don't want to say put them in your toolbox, but they're always going to be there for you. So I've always appreciated that about you. So as I was mentoring my two SWO ensigns, and they were like asking me about the Chiefs mess and how to deal with their Chiefs, and because sometimes it's not always the best relationship, the Divo and Chief relationship. And I was like, go to your CMC. Like, I've gone to my CMC a million times. He has always been there for me, even to this day. Because sometimes the wardroom and the mess relationship isn't always great, but when you have
Hmm.
a really great CMC and really great senior chief leadership, you know, it really makes a difference. And I was like, my CMC's always been there for me, so I appreciate that throughout all these years. I not only have been able to watch, your career and where you've gone, but that you've always been there for me. So I can't thank you enough for that. I truly mean that.
Well, thank you for that. Um, and I think that's a good stopping point. I mean, anytime somebody talks good about me, we should probably like end on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, no, hey, so I will leave it like this with the audience. So listen, man, listen, if you have made it to the end of this podcast, and I hope that many of you will and have, I hope that you take a lot from this. I hope that you're inspired by Sarah's story. And if you're trying to do big things in your life, you're trying to overcome some odds and trying to make big decisions and trying to figure out what the next thing looks like for you. Best advice I can give you is just to keep going. Like, the only way you're going to get there is to keep going, because if you stop, you never will. And I'm proud of all of you, and thank you for listening. Keep rising.